The night is not the problem. Why exhausted people refuse to sleep. At 1:47 in the morning, the exhausted person is rarely having fun. They are not alive with inspiration. They are not rested. They are not choosing the night with the clean confidence of someone doing exactly what they want to do. More often, they are half awake under a blue-white glow, watching something they do not care about, scrolling through a feed that stopped being interesting 40 minutes ago, bargaining with themselves in 5-minute increments. One more video, one more post, one more little piece of life before tomorrow arrives. From the outside, this looks irrational. A person is tired, knows they need sleep, knows tomorrow will be worse if they stay awake, and stays awake anyway. It looks like laziness. It looks like poor discipline. It looks like a simple failure to put the phone down. But that explanation is too shallow. A more complete explanation is this. Late night sleep delay is often not a rebellion against sleep. It is a rebellion against a day that never felt like it belonged to you. The scientific term closest to this behavior is bedtime procrastination, defined by Krauss and colleagues as failing to go to bed at the intended time, despite no external circumstances preventing it. Their original work positioned bedtime procrastination as a self-regulation problem and found that people with lower self-regulation reported more bedtime procrastination and more insufficient sleep. Crucially, the researchers noted that the issue may not be that people dislike sleep, but that they do not want to quit the activities they are already doing. That sentence matters, not wanting to quit, because the real psychological drama of bedtime procrastination is not simply, I should sleep, but I do not. It is, I finally have control over something, and sleep feels like surrendering it. The difference between tiredness and ownership. Human beings do not only need rest, we need agency. Self-determination theory, one of the most influential frameworks in motivation psychology, argues that human well-being depends heavily on the satisfaction of 3 basic psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. When these needs are satisfied, people tend to show better motivation and mental health. When they are frustrated, motivation and well-being suffer. Autonomy does not mean total freedom. It means feeling that your actions are, in some meaningful sense, yours. You may still have work, duties, bills, commutes, messages, family obligations, admin, deadlines, and all the other little vampires that drink the hours out of a day. But if your day contains enough moments of chosen action, the mind can tolerate constraint. It can say, fine, today was demanding, but some part of it was mine. The problem begins when the entire day feels externally assigned. Wake up because the alarm says so. Work because the schedule says so. Reply because the notification says so. Eat quickly because time says so. Exercise because guilt says so. Sleep because tomorrow says so. By the end of that kind of day, sleep is not experienced as recovery. It is experienced as the final command. That is why the phrase revenge, bedtime procrastination, became culturally sticky. It captures something emotionally true. The person is taking revenge on the structure of the day, even if the person who suffers is their future self. The revenge is not rational. Revenge rarely is, but psychologically it makes sense. If waking life has felt controlled, the night becomes the last available territory of self-direction. The tragedy is that the territory is usually terrible. It is not deep leisure. It is not friendship, mastery, creativity, or meaningful rest. It is often low-quality autonomy, the ability to keep choosing tiny things from a menu designed never to end. Another clip, another refresh, another mildly amusing distraction. Not freedom, exactly, but the simulation of freedom. And when a person is starved of the real thing, the simulation becomes powerful. Why normal sleep advice often fails. Most sleep advice treats bedtime procrastination as a local problem. It assumes the issue lives at 11:30 p.m. Put your phone away. Dim the lights. Make a routine. Avoid caffeine. Be disciplined. None of this is wrong. Some of it is very useful, but it is incomplete. The reason it often fails is that it tries to solve midnight without understanding the rest of the day. It focuses on the moment of collapse, not the conditions that created it. Work recovery research helps explain why. The drama model of leisure and recovery identifies psychological experiences such as detachment, relaxation, autonomy, mastery, meaning, and affiliation as important for well-being. In a longitudinal validation study, detachment from work, relaxation, and autonomy were meaningfully related to better functioning and lower ill-being. The same research highlights that Psychological detachment and relaxation are particularly important in reducing strain and recovery need. In plain English, people do not recover just because time passes. They recover when their time has the right psychological texture. A person can technically have 3 hours between work and bed and still not recover. If that time is fragmented by chores, messages, guilt, mental replay, half working, or passive exhaustion, it may not feel like leisure at all. The body is off the clock, but the nervous system never receives the message. This is where bedtime becomes dangerous. If the evening does not contain real decompression, the mind tries to manufacture it at the worst possible time. The person does not delay sleep because they are well rested and making a careful decision. They delay sleep because they are under-recovered, overstimulated, and desperate for one patch of time that feels unclaimed. That is also why saying, "just go to bed earlier," can feel almost insulting. To the person inside the loop, going to bed earlier does not feel like self-care. It feels like giving up the only part of the day that was not already taken, the self-control trap. There is a second trap. The very state that makes sleep most necessary also makes sleep harder to choose. Bedtime is a self-regulation challenge placed at the end of the day, when self-regulation is often weakest. Crows and colleagues explicitly raise this possibility, noting that the decision to go to bed occurs when people may have little mental energy or self-control strength left. This is beautifully cruel design by life itself. At bedtime, the person must perform several acts of control at once. They must stop an immediately rewarding activity. They must tolerate the emotional quiet that arrives when stimulation stops. They must accept that the day is over. They must choose a delayed benefit, feeling better tomorrow, over an immediate reward available right now. That is hard enough when someone is calm and resourced. It is much harder when they are tired, stressed, lonely, frustrated, or disappointed by the day they just lived. Sleep and self-control also appear to reinforce each other in both directions. A systematic review and meta-analysis on sleep and self-control describes sleep as an important antecedent of self-control, noting that sleep-deprived individuals show reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, a region involved in attention, impulse control, affect regulation, and decision-making. So the loop becomes vicious. Poor sleep weakens self-control. Weaker self-control makes it harder to stop scrolling the next night. The next night becomes later. The next day becomes harder. The harder day creates a stronger craving for nighttime escape. This is why bedtime procrastination is not merely a bad habit. It is a feedback system. And feedback systems do not break because someone gets annoyed at themselves. They break when the inputs change. The phone as the perfect weapon. The modern phone did not create the human desire for autonomy, distraction, novelty, or escape. Those are old. What the phone did was package all of them into a glowing rectangle available at the exact moment self-control is weakest. This matters because bedtime procrastination is often not simply being on your phone. People have always delayed sleep with books, television, games, conversations, chores, or wandering thoughts. But the phone is unusually good at prolonging the delay because it removes natural stopping points. A book has chapters, a television episode has credits. A conversation eventually runs out of steam. A social feed does not end. Research on bedtime procrastination supports this media connection. A systematic review and meta-analysis reported that high bedtime procrastinators spend more time in social and leisure media activities, such as television, computers, and smartphones. The same review found bedtime procrastination was moderately associated with lower self-control, evening chronotype, shorter sleep duration, poor sleep quality, and daytime fatigue. Recent studies also link problematic smartphone use, bedtime procrastination, and poor sleep quality. For example, a 2024 study in adolescents found that bedtime procrastination may mediate the relationship between problematic smartphone use and sleep quality. The phone is not just a distraction here, it is an autonomy machine. It lets the user choose endlessly, but at low cost. It offers novelty without effort, social contact without vulnerability, entertainment without planning, and a sense of control without the burden of actually building a life that feels controlled. That last part is harsh, but important. The phone does not merely steal sleep. It offers a counterfeit solution to a real psychological wound. The wound is, my day did not feel like mine. The counterfeit solution is, keep scrolling. You are choosing now. And in a narrow sense, you are choosing. That is what makes the trap so sticky. No one is forcing your thumb upward. No one is holding your eyes open. The behavior feels voluntary enough to satisfy the craving for agency, but frictionless enough to bypass the deeper question. Is this actually what I wanted? Usually it is not. Not all late nights are the same. A serious theory needs boundaries. Not everyone awake at 1 a.m. is engaged in revenge bedtime procrastination. Some people have insomnia. Some have delayed sleep phase tendencies or evening chronotypes. Some work shifts. Some are caring for children or relatives. Some are anxious. Some are in pain. Some are creative at night. Some genuinely prefer a later schedule and function well when life allows it. That distinction matters because the problem is not moral. The question is not, are late nights bad? The question is this late night chosen, restorative, and compatible with the life you want? Or is it compulsive, avoidant, and quietly damaging tomorrow? Chronotype research makes this nuance important. The meta-analysis on bedtime procrastination found a moderate positive association between bedtime procrastination and the evening chronotype, meaning evening-oriented people may be more vulnerable to delayed bedtime. But the same analysis also found associations with poorer sleep outcomes and lower self-control, suggesting bedtime procrastination is not reducible to simply being a night owl. This is where the lived experience becomes the diagnostic clue. If you stay up late and feel alive, intentional, and aligned with yourself, that is one thing. If you stay up late while feeling tired, foggy, vaguely ashamed, and unable to stop, that is another. The first may be preference. The second is a loop. The hidden emotion, refusing the end of the day. There is an emotional layer beneath the behavioral one. Going to sleep requires accepting that the day is over. For someone satisfied with their day, that is not a major threat. For someone who feels the day was swallowed by obligation, the end of the day can feel like a small defeat. Sleep is supposed to restore us, but psychologically, sleep also closes the account. It says, whatever today was, that is what it was. That can be surprisingly hard to tolerate. If the day contained no meaningful progress, sleep can feel like admitting failure. If the day contained no pleasure, sleep can feel like accepting deprivation. If the day was spent meeting everyone else's needs, sleep can feel like erasing the self before it had a chance to appear. So the person delays, not because the video is so good, not because the feed is so fascinating, not because they have made a careful argument against rest. They delay because stopping would mean facing the silence underneath the stimulation. And in that silence is the uncomfortable recognition that the day did not feel lived. It merely happened. This is the part most productivity advice misses. It assumes the person needs better rules. Sometimes they do, but often the person first needs a better relationship with their own day. Because when life repeatedly gives people no satisfying sense of agency, competence, connection, or recovery, they will search for substitutes. The substitutes may be cheap, but they are not random. They are attempts to meet real needs in degraded form. The scroll offers autonomy. Choose anything. It offers competence. Understand jokes, opinions, drama, information. It offers relatedness. See people. React to people. Feel near the social world. It offers detachment. Forget your own life for a while. The problem is that it offers all of these in forms too thin to nourish and too stimulating to release. So the person consumes more, not because it satisfies them, but because it almost does. The cost is paid tomorrow. The cruelest part of bedtime procrastination is that the bill is charged to the version of you least able to pay it. Tomorrow's self wakes up with less sleep, worse mood, weaker focus, and lower patience. The day becomes harder. Harder days require more recovery. But because the person is tired, they are less likely to pursue high-quality recovery, exercise, hobbies, conversation, cooking, creating, walking, reading, tidying the environment. Those require initiation energy, so they reach again for low-friction recovery. The phone is there. The feed is ready. The loop begins again. Public health data makes the stakes clear. The CDC states that insufficient sleep is linked with increased risk of anxiety, depression, obesity, heart disease, injury, and other serious conditions, and reports that in 2020, 35% of US adults had insufficient sleep duration of less than 7 hours in a 24-hour period. That does not mean one late night ruins your life. It means repeated sleep loss is not a harmless personal quirk. It is a biological tax on mood, attention, metabolism, safety, and long-term health. And yet the answer cannot simply be fear. Fear rarely builds good sleep. Shame rarely builds good systems. Telling someone that sleep deprivation is bad is like telling a broke person that money is useful. They know the problem is not awareness. The problem is the structure of the loop. The real fix: move freedom earlier. If the theory is correct, then the solution is not merely to make bedtime stricter. It is to make the day more livable. The central intervention is this: give the mind a real experience of autonomy before it is exhausted enough to sabotage itself. That does not require a perfect life. It does not require quitting your job, moving to a cabin, deleting every app, becoming a monk, and communicating only through hand-carved wooden tablets. Tempting, but logistically poor. It requires inserting genuine ownership earlier in the day. A small pocket of time that is not productive, not optimized, not performed for anyone. Not secretly another self-improvement assignment wearing a fake mustache. Just chosen. 20 minutes can be enough to change the emotional meaning of the evening. A walk without a podcast. A chapter of a book. Cooking something slowly. Playing guitar badly. Sitting outside, calling someone you actually like. Drawing, stretching. Cleaning one surface while listening to music. Watching one episode intentionally instead of grazing across 14 fragments of content. The content matters less than the psychological signature. I chose this, and I was there for it. That kind of leisure does what late-night scrolling pretends to do. It restores agency. It creates detachment. It gives the day a sense of having contained you, not just your obligations. Then bedtime no longer has to carry the entire burden of freedom. This is why the best sleep intervention may begin hours before sleep, not with a lavender candle and a military-grade phone ban, but with a more humane evening architecture. First, separate decompression from bedtime. Do not make the bed the place where the day finally gets processed. If the bed becomes the emotional landfill for the entire day, sleep has to fight through everything dumped there. Second, create a closing ritual. The brain likes cues. A simple shutdown sequence. Plug in the phone away from the bed. Write tomorrow's first task. Lower the lights. Brush teeth. Put one object back where it belongs. Tells the mind that the day is landing. Third, choose a minimum viable bedtime for bad days. Perfection collapses under stress. A rigid ideal bedtime may fail the moment life gets messy. A minimum viable bedtime gives you a floor. Maybe not the perfect night, but not self-destruction either. Fourth, replace the question, how do I force myself to sleep, with why does sleep feel like losing? That is the question with teeth. If sleep feels like losing, the answer is not only sleep hygiene. The answer is daytime ownership, the reward of stopping. There is a strange grief in going to bed on time. You have to let the day be incomplete. You have to accept that some messages will wait, some desires will remain unmet, some tabs will stay unread, some version of you will not be fully expressed tonight. But there is also dignity in it, because when you sleep, you are not surrendering your freedom. You are protecting the person who has to live tomorrow. That is the deeper reversal. The late night self thinks tomorrow is the enemy. Tomorrow is the thing that brings work, effort, responsibility, repetition. So the late night self steals from tomorrow to make tonight feel wider. But tomorrow is not the enemy. Tomorrow is you, arriving with the consequences. The goal is not to become the kind of person who never stays up late, never scrolls, never wastes time, never wants escape. That person sounds unbearable. The goal is to stop confusing self-sabotage with freedom. Real freedom is not the ability to ignore tomorrow. Real freedom is having enough ownership of today that you do not need to attack tomorrow to prove you are alive. So if you find yourself awake at 1:47 a.m., exhausted, phone in hand, watching something you do not care about, the question is not simply, why am I so undisciplined? A better question is, what part of my day did I not get to live? That is where the loop begins. That is where the solution begins too, because the night is not the problem. The night is where the problem finally gets quiet enough to hear.